introduce to you Joe from OneStop Mining, and he has a compelling presentation about overclocking and some of the technology that they use, and I know you guys are going to love this. So, Joe?
Thank you. So it's going to be, that previous presentation was really good, so it's a tough act to follow. And my subject is not quite as exciting, but well, it's exciting for me anyway, overclocking. So who wouldn't want to overclock, right? So what is overclocking? Overclocking is just to get more hash rate from your miner by increasing the ASIC chip frequency. Right? So that's pretty straightforward. People have been doing it on PCs for years, right? The gamers been doing it, you know. So why not do it with your ASIC miner too? So I just want to show this kind of table here. Just let me see if this can get the pointer working. Oh, there we go. Cool. So you can see. I hope this is easy to understand. So S19 and the S19 Pro both have the same chip, basically. But S19 Pro has more of them. And in the S19, each chip actually runs at a lower wattage, you know, on S19 Pro. So an S19 Pro runs at lower wattage than the S19. So what this means is that it gives you more opportunity to overclock. You can increase the, it can apply more power and overclock the S19 Pro. So there's quite a bit of headroom to do that, right? Well, of course, it'll be at a price of, at the cost of a slight decrease in efficiency. But if you want more hash rate, hash power per miner, this is, you know, overclocking will allow you to do that, okay? And so I'll go into the next one. Oops. Oh, hang on. Yeah, so benefits of overclocking is, you know, it kind of boosts the revenue potential of your miner, even as, you know, the network difficulty increases. And also applicable to this week as hash price decreases. I think this week hash price is down to less than 10 cents per terahash, right? And it potentially accelerates your return on investment because you're getting more more hashing out of your equipment. And also as your miners age and as network difficulty continues to increase, the overclocking allows you to kind of maybe have your miner has a longer profitable hashing life, right? And people were doing that actually a few years ago with the S9s, right? So you take the S9s and you overclock it, you know, and you can kind of extend the life of the hashing life of the S9. Let's see. And also, it allows you to, when you combine overclocking with immersion cooling, you get even greater, greater hash rate out of the miner. So I'll go into I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Okay. And also, the last one here is another lever in the demand response. In that you can, you know, if you normally overclock and then your power provider says you got to dial down a bit, or perhaps one of the first things you can do is to stop overclocking, right? And hopefully maybe you can shed enough load, you know, to meet your kind of your demand response. So what are the risks of overclocking? Well, one, it's as I mentioned earlier, it can decrease your efficiency, right? And if you don't do it properly, it can overheat and burn out your miners. I've done that myself. Whoops, sorry. And also, you know, because it will use more power, so it can exceed the capacity of your the power supply, you know, especially the stock power supply of your miner. And it could also, if you do it on a large scale, you can exceed the power budget you have for your facility or for your module if you're arranging your miners in modules, right? But anyway, all these risks can be mitigated through proper planning, you know, design and testing, right? And monitoring too, because you need to know exactly how much power you are using at all times. So how do you overclock? I use the first example is What's Miner actually has a immersion-ready high-performance firmware. And if you use that, you typically can, I've done that with like M30S. You can get about 5 to 10% overclock. And also it's, if you're using their immersion-friendly firmware, you don't have to use fan spoofers, because that's one thing you have to do when you, if you're immersing the miners, you have to you remove the fans and you have to put fan spoofers on, right? And then another way is you can use there are quite a few third-party firmware out there for like S19s. You can use the one from Vinish, from Brains, and I believe Bigspit has it too. I've used the Bigspit on the M30S on the What's Miner, and that's how I know it works. And usually you can get about 10 to 20% overclock, quite stably. And Brains it actually auto tunes, so it optimizes how much you can overclock. And but the problem with using a lot of these aftermarket or third-party firmware is that they do charge like 2 to 3% dev fee, which means for about 2 to 3% of the time your miner's hashing for the developers. And I think that's fine on a small scale. If you're a hobby miner, that's fine. But if I'm running a 100 megawatt industrial mining facility, I wouldn't be comfortable with that 2 to 3% dev fee. Right? And the codes are usually not audited, so I have no idea what else it's doing, in addition to those 2 to 3% dev fees. Right? So if you're if you're a public company and you're mining on an industrial scale, not sure this would be a good idea. And then the third way you can do it is, well, this is kind of plugging our own product. We have an accessory board that sits between the Bitmain, the S19 control board, and the power supply and the hash boards. So with that one, it's a hardware solution, so you can get about up to 25% overclock for air cooling, and you can get up to 60% overclock for immersion cooling. So then let's see, the next slide should actually, next slide doesn't get into that. So here's an idea of overclocking with the S19 Pro 110 terahash using the Vinish firmware, and also our Go Power OneStop Mining, the same 6 kilowatt power supply. So this, you have to use a bigger power supply. As you can see, let me just see here. Where's my pointer? Oh, there it is. So this is stock. This is without overclocking, and then so you can go up to say like say 132 here. And now you're using 4,130 watts, and your efficiency now decreases to 31 watts per terahash, right? And if you go all the way down to the bottom here, you can get up to 162 terahash, but at this point you will be using like 6 kilowatts of power, and now your efficiency now drops to 37 watts per terahash. So that's like here it's like 89% increase in power consumption. So you really have to watch it. This is why you really have to watch the economics of overclocking to make sure it makes sense for what you're doing, because it's what are your priorities, right? And
this is air cooled, right?
Yeah, this is air cooled. So again, this one goes into a little bit more detail about, this goes into a little bit more detail about our overclocking controller. We call it overclocking controller, but it's really an overclocking accessory board, right? So it sits kind of between this is a Bitmain S19 Pro control board and the hash board. So it sits kind of in the middle here, and it auto tunes to a degree, and it bases it on the temperature to make sure you don't burn out your board, right? So from our testing, this is kind of a steady state operation. we find that it gives you about 25% increase in hash rate, and at this level, it increases your power consumption to 4,300 watts, and so you still achieve 32 watts per terahash. So that's pretty good. In my book, that's for real world operation, that's pretty good. So that's pretty optimal. So again, like I mentioned earlier, if you want to overclock, depends on how much you overclock, chances are you're going to need bigger power supplies. And OneStop Mining, we sell a few models, all the way up to 8 kilowatts. Okay, and also using our hardware overclock accessory board. Since it's a hardware solution, you still use the Bitmain firmware. There's no change in firmware required, and there's no dev fee, so you're not paying anyone any aftermarket firmware 2 to 3% dev fee. And as I mentioned earlier, the winning combination is overclocking and plus immersion, right? Because obviously, I don't know if you are aware of the benefits of immersion cooling, because immersion cooling, liquid immersion cooling, is a lot more stable than air cooling, because liquid carries heat a lot better, and it's also therefore it gives you more headroom to overclock. And it's stable and increases reliability. It runs a lot cleaner because you're not blowing air around. Even if you have the best air filtration system, there will still be dust because you're moving so much air that dust will inevitably get into the system. So with liquid immersion cooling, you don't have that problem. And let's see. Yeah, and with this up to 60% overclocking with our hardware-based overclocking solution. So that means that your miners will stay profitable, will hash profitably for a much longer period of time than without with just overclocking alone, or even with air cooling, right, and no overclocking. So if you have overclocking and immersion, your miners will hash profitably for much, much longer. Okay, so what's the downside? Well, the downside is the higher capital cost, because now you got to invest in the immersion cooling system. It's got tanks and dielectric fluid and pumps and all these things, and so there are more parts, right? And as they require more upfront investment and also more operationally a bit more work. So just a very quick introduction to OneStop Mining, because we're very new to this country. OneStop Mining was founded in China in 2017. We have, we were at one time we were one of the largest hosting providers in China. We had, 2019 we had about 300 megawatts under management, for hosting our customers' equipment. And in 2019, I guess the story was, I heard the story that we were going through so many power supplies that we decided in 2019 we might as well design and manufacture our own power supplies. and higher quality ones too. They're more reliable, more robust than the stock power supplies. And then in 2021 started kind of expanding our mining operations overseas in U.S. and in Kazakhstan. And then we also have our own kind of R&D group. We do the design. We have a lot of engineers. We do all our own designs. And so in 2022, we started work on our hardware overclocking solution. And so in addition to products that we design and manufacture, we are also a distributor for all the popular ASIC mining brands out there. We got Bitmain, Canaan, Silicon, and a few others. And we also source. We can also source pretty much any any components that you need. We have not just for ASIC miners, but we also manufacture. We manufacture containers, like 20-foot and 40-foot mining containers. We do a lot. We do a lot of things. So please stop by our booth, and we can show you. We'll have a catalog of our entire product range, right? And then just since I'm up here, I thought I would also mention a couple of new products. So here it is. This is our immersion cooling system, and so it has the immersion tank, the oil pump on this side for the dielectric fluid, and then the heat exchanger, and then we have the water pump for the for the water side of the cooling system. So it's a two loop system. Okay. Yeah, and then here's a bit, a few more specs, but anyway, small prints. But if you come by the booth later, we can kind of give you more information if you're interested. So another one of our latest product, and we have one at our booth, is our, we are the exclusive distributor for the Hammer D10 Litecoin Dogecoin miner. So this is a brand new product. It just started shipping this month. And now it's available in limited quantities for those who are interested in checking it out. And I guess it has two operating modes. So you get the full one performance mode where you get the full performance, and another one, which is another mode, is a power efficiency mode. The efficiency mode, so that it uses less power per hash, right? So right now maybe in the bear market, you might want to hash more in the efficiency mode. Anyway, again, come by our booth and have a talk with us about it if you're interested. So here we are. This is part of our North American team. There's myself. I'm the strategic consultant, and then we have Joy in the middle. She's the sales director, and Sean as sales manager. Both Joy and Sean are based out of Houston, and so we have we have a warehouse in Houston, and we also have a sales team there. We also have after sales support, and we can also do repairs. So we believe this is where we add value. Is that we have all this. We have service and support and sales and warehousing all in Houston for our North American customers, North and South American customers. And this is in a way makes us different from other companies where they ship absolutely everything out of from China, and yet there's a big of a wait and have to deal with customs and all those things, right? Well, I mean, there are some things we sell that still come from China. For example, if you buy kind of like we can get you S19 Antminer S19. So if you buy those are shipped direct from China. Yeah, it's just kind of silly to have inventory of ASIC miners. So anyway, so every man's a miner. Well, every man and woman is a miner. Anyway, thank you very much. Any questions?
Thanks, Joe.
Nope.
Do you guys, are there any questions here? I got a mic for you if you do.
So I had a question on your hardware. You're talking about the economics between the joules and the increase of the overclock, increasing your power consumption versus your production of terahash. Does it also have a, like you do on your Litecoin and Doge miner, where your hardware also has a feature where it can also be optimized for economics?
Not as far as I know.
No.
Yeah, I guess, if you need to operate in the efficiency mode, you just stop your overclocking.
Well, like, for example, when the hardware gets a little bit more older, it's sometimes optimal to keep it running more efficient to, prevent more repairs and stuff like that, and just elongate the process.
So it's kind of opposite of overclocking. Yeah. No, that might be a different product. I don't know. No, got no plan for that product yet because I don't think there's a demand.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Joe, thank you so
Okay.
much again.
All right,
Really
thanks,
good
everyone.
presentation.